Well guys, we put in no telling how many countless hours over the last month getting all of our fields ready to plant. So what do y'all say? Let's go to the field, actually get 2025 kicked off. All right, me, Andy, and Kelly been working all morning on getting everything set up on the planter and everything, getting all of our technology in the planter, all of it hooked up, talking to each other, prescriptions loaded, etc., etc. We got all of our seed meters in. We're starting out with soybeans this year, so all 23 rows, we got all of our seed plates in and everything, and found out we was missing 2 tiny critical parts on one unit here. Somehow, some way, the little clip that holds this holds the seed disc in is gone missing, and also the little spring that fits there that holds our little roller on here that keeps tension on it is also missing on this one unit. So anyway, I called my folks up there, Advantage Mid-South. They got the stuff that we need, and they're actually nice enough. Instead of me having to drive all the way north of Dyer to get those 2 little pieces, they're going to bring them by this afternoon, drop them off on the farm. So, but we did get everything communicating on the planter. All the electronics works. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. And all that's left to do is put those little 2 pieces in, get everything lubed up, load up a seed, and start dropping some seed in the ground. This afternoon, I'm out here working on this by myself because Kelly and Andy are actually in the field. They're spraying our wheat with a fungicide. Wheat has really been heading out the last few days and just starting to pollinate, and hitting it with a fungicide to prevent head scab. But we're out about the absolute perfect timing on that. So before we get our sprayer contaminated with gramoxone and all the residuals we're going to be using on soybeans, corn, and cotton and everything, while our sprayer's still clean, we'll go ahead and get our wheat laid by, be completely done with it. Next trip over our wheat's going to be whenever we take the combine to the field in June. So from here on out, we can focus strictly on getting our crops planted and off to a good start. So let me attend to these last few details here, and I'll see you back at the field. All right, let's try her out. Pray everything does what it's supposed to do. Turn our alternator, air compressor, and delta force on. Turn our fan on. All right, load our seed. All right, all our meters loaded good. Vacuum is right there close to right. We got maximum air pressure. And put her in the ground. All right, everything is planting. Population 130,000. Vacuum holding steady. No fault codes on our load sensors or anything. 2025 is underway officially, guys. All right, we planted a few 100 yards. Let's get out there and do some digging. Oh, I'm going to get absolutely soaked doing this. We had a heavy dew this morning, almost like we got a light rain last night. Y'all know I love my cover crops, but one downside to them checking seed depth and planter performance in them whenever you're planting.
There you go. We got some bright red soybeans, so they should be pretty easy to find. Well, I thought they'd be easy to find. Oh, there we are. Yeah, they about 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches deep. They're definitely a little too deep there. We just checked one of our rear units. Let's check one of our front units. Yeah, those can go about another notch lower right there. They're just shy of 1 inch deep. Then I'm gonna put my front units 1/2 notch lower.
All right, I'm gonna adjust my rear units 1/2 notch shallower, and that should put everything at the correct depths. All right, now that my pants, legs, and boots are thoroughly saturated, let's try this again. There's a thin spotted cover crop. Stop there, check her again.
All right, front unit. There she is. Just past first knuckle. All right, rear unit. Just past the first knuckle, maybe just a fraction of 1 inch shallower than the front ones. Right there, right around 1 inch deep. That's what we're looking for. And the seed trench is closed up nicely. There's a front unit with a Martin spike closing wheel closed up.
And that's going to be especially critical to minimizing slug damage in this high biomass cover crop here. First rule of planting when in cover crops, you got to get the seed trench closed. Somehow, some way, you got to get it closed. Otherwise, it's a recipe for having problems right from the get-go. All right, we've only got our planter about halfway loaded up, got about 45 acres worth of seed in there. First rule of thumb when starting planting, don't fill your boxes all the way up, because you got problems and you gotta set one of those boxes out. It's a lot easier to lift a half loaded box than it is a fully loaded box. But anyway, another reason we've only got it loaded halfway, 45 acres, is I've got to plant my soybean variety trials for Pioneer this afternoon, and it's early morning, shouldn't be a problem getting that 45 acres done. But I've also got to run back to the shop and meet with a producer for a very big YouTube channel that I am filming an episode for them tomorrow. I can't say anything more about that, you know, it's in the contract. I can't talk about it on social media until you know, it's done and ready to be released. But that's something else y'all can be looking forward to in the coming months. Don't exactly know when it'll be released or whatever, but we will be filming tomorrow. And they got a producer's going to show up today and wants to look at the location, decide exactly where they're going to film and all that kind of stuff. So I got to run back in the shop probably shortly after lunch. So hopefully with 45 acres of seed in there, there will be plenty doable to get it run out, get the planter good to empty by the time Pioneer shows up, and then we can just roll right in there and get our full season soybean plots planted. Also, speaking of TV, y'all remember back during cotton planting last year when we filmed an episode for a TV show called, I believe it's called Farms of America. We finally got word that that show will be airing sometime in May. Don't know the exact release date yet, but it will be shown on the Cowboy Channel. Now, you might be like me, you've never heard of the Cowboy Channel, not exactly sure where you find it. I think you find it on like smart TVs or Roku TVs. It's available there. I'm not sure if, you know, if you're a cable subscriber or satellite provider, if it's available on there. I'm not sure. You'll just have to look. But like I said, it will be coming sometime in May on the Cowboy Channel, and when I get more details on that, I'll be sure to let y'all know. We've seen the episode that we're a part of, and I was extremely happy with it. I thought they did an absolutely fantastic job with it. So hopefully if y'all get a chance to watch it, y'all enjoy just as much as I did. think everything's running a-okay, about as good as it possibly can. We planted about 15 acres so far, and everything's working like a charm, at least on my end. Can't say so much about Kelly and Andy. They got out to the sprayer this morning. I got about half of the wheat sprayed yesterday with fungicide, and Andy fired the sprayer up and immediately popped the code for the for one of the sensors on the DPF filter. Anyway, didn't have one there in Jackson, which they're close to. Had one in Brownsville. Going to try and get it transferred up in Jackson and hopefully get it fixed later today, hopefully before the thing derates itself, because I told him just to keep on spraying as long as the engine was running fine. And more freaking emissions problems, and of course they happen at the worst possible time when you don't have time for any downtime. But they got to hurry up and get that rest of that wheat sprayed so they can get started over here spraying burn down. And we're going to switch up our burn down a little bit this year on both soybeans and cotton. Now on corn, all we do is we spray gramoxone. We don't put down any kind of pre-emerge or whatever, because we got good options post-emerge to control pigweeds in corn. So, and the cover crop generally provides, you know, enough weed control that we don't have to worry about that. Well, there's not near as good a post-emerge pigweed control options in soybeans and cotton. So just to play it safe, we always include a pre-emerge at planting. However, I haven't been happy with the performance of my pre-emerges in both soybeans and cotton for the last few years, and got to thinking, you know, we're putting in the pre-emerge with our gramoxone and spraying burn down. You got all this cover crop out here, you know, it's taking in the gramoxone to kill it. Well, it stands to reason the cover crop is also taking in the pre-emerge, you know, the Zidua, the metribuzin, or the brake, just depending on what crop we're spraying. It's also taking that chemical in. Well, if it's taking that chemical in, it's not having an opportunity to get down to the soil and get incorporated in the soil where it's actually going to be effective. So I got to think, you know, we're spending anywhere, you know, $15 to $23 an acre on pre-emerge, but really not getting very much activity out of it. So why don't we change things up a little bit? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make 2 spraying passes in order to do our, you know, our plant spray. First pass is going to be with just gramoxone. Go ahead and kill the cover crop. Now that gramoxone will work really quickly. Sunshine like this, you know, it ought to work in a day. So we'll spray it all with gramoxone, and then we will come back when the cover crop is dead or almost dead, and then we'll apply for our soybeans, Zidua and metribuzin, and that way it's not getting taken in the plant. It's a lot of it sitting on top of the plant, but as soon as we get a rain, or we're predicting to get a rain on Thursday, it will then get incorporated in the soil. So hopefully we get our money's worth on these pre-emerge chemicals. Yeah, it's going to require twice the time to spray, and it's going to be kind of hectic because, you know, that stuff's got to be put out before, you know, the soybeans come up. So we probably got, I'm going to guess, we got about a 5-day window to get it applied before the soybeans start cracking the soil there. The only big problem with that is, well, what happens if we get rained out? You don't have a chance to get it in. That's going to be the kicker where, you know, might throw a monkey wrench in our plans. Well, we went ahead and came down here to the bottom and got our test plots laid off for later today. Pioneer rep texted me, asking me if I had enough room for 4 more varieties that she wants to throw in. So we're kind of tight on space down here, so came on and got them laid off. We have just enough room for those 4 extra varieties. So this field is ready to go. As soon as she shows up and my planter's empty of seed, we'll be able to drop right in and get these plots planted and get back to planting our rest of our beans. We still got about 30 more acres to plant before we get the planter empty though. But I tell you what, I can't express is how happy I am that everything back here is working like it should. I tell you what, the decision to start planting and actually getting started planting is probably the second most difficult decision I face every year. The most difficult decision would be the decision whether to actually replant or not. but the actual decision to when to get started planting it's either number one or number two, because you want to get your crop planted as early as possible, but the earlier you get it planted, you know, the more inclement weather you're likely to run into. So as expensive it is to plant, and then as expensive it is to replant, I mean, you want to get it done right the first time, because if you have to replant, you're never going to be looking at a 100% yield potential scenario. It's never going to happen. So if you don't get it right the first time, you're automatically going to take a yield hit. But do I plant today? Do I wait a couple of days? You know, we're watching the forecast, rain coming in, we're watching temperatures. You know, there's so many different weather scenarios that can play havoc with getting your crop to come up. You know, a lot of folks started planting 2-3 weeks ago. Several folks planted quite a bit before the flood, and I've heard so at least some of them are going to have to do at least some sort of replanting. And you know, right now we're in what I consider my optimal time to plant both corn and soybeans. You know, ideally I would have liked to have gotten my beans planted last week, and we'd be worried about planting corn today, but we just had so much field work to do, we were not able to make it happen. But I'd say, you know, right now getting our beans in the ground, we're looking at about as close to maximum yield potential as we can possibly get. Might have gotten a little bit more if we got them planted last week or so, but I mean, we're still right there 100% yield potential. But unfortunately, it's also the ideal time to be planting corn too. And by the time we get done with beans, and then this rain comes through Thursday, you know, we're going to be on the tail end of the ideal time for planting corn. We're going to have to hustle, get it planted. But you know, I've planted corn in May before, and it did just fine, made good yields. So I'm not as concerned about it right now as I would have been in past years. And you know, there's some years, just depending on the weather, you're not able to get things planted in the ideal window. It's just you know, the weather's just not cooperating. But it did last year, and it did this year. It's just the amount of field work plus all that litter we had to spread just put me behind the 8 ball on planting, you know, as early as I wanted to. All right, we get to use our newly rebuilt crossing for the first time. Tell you what, I'm not going to pucker up near as bad as I did when I first started dumping dirt to get this thing fixed. But you know what? Not all is lost by getting a little bit later start on planting. I mean, look at all that cover crop, all that biomass we've been able to accumulate. I mean, that's just going to really help just build up our soils that much more, that much quicker. We're going to get better weed control out of it. You know, and if we have a drought this year, you know, this extra residue on top of the soil, you know, preventing, you know, any kind of evaporation loss from the soil, keeping the soil cooler, you know, it'll help us yield that much more. So, you know, and that's another struggle I face with every year on deciding when to plant. You know, do we try to go wait a little bit longer, accumulate some more biomass? Do we go ahead and pull the trigger? You know, there's kind of a fine line of balancing, you know, managing your cover crop for, you know, maximum production and maximum benefit, but then also, you know, taking advantage of a good early planting window to go ahead and get your cash crop off to a good start, because I mean, your cover crop's not what pays the bills, it's your cash crop that pays the bills. So, you know, we're just really kind of walking a fine line every year on deciding when to plant. Well, as you can see, we're back here at the shop, 25 acres in, and we got the first casualty of planting season. I was going around the edge of a field and did notice a wash on my outside my planter, and I believe that's what done the damage. As you can see right here, we've got our depth control handle. Over here, we don't have our depth control handle. So what happened is up here on these pusher units, the front units hit that wash, and it's enough of a shock that it broke the stem off the depth control handle. So this isn't really an uncommon problem for these planters. These pusher units on the front, you know, they're in front of the toolbar and they're being pushed along, and they take a lot more abuse, a lot more torque and everything else than what the trailing units do. And I love this planter. I love working on this planter with these pusher units. It makes it so much easier because everything's not crammed in there But these front units definitely do take quite a bit more abuse, and generally this is where we have our problems at. And then not only on this unit did it break the depth control handle, on this unit it immediately started throwing an error code for the load cell for the Delta Force. So when it hit that wash, probably messed up the load cell on that one too. But you know, I never would have known that depth control handle was broke until later on, you know. But luckily up there on the monitor, I'm monitoring, you know, down pressure and ground contact, and it showed this unit right here as having lost ground contact. And when that depth control handle broke off, you know, the Delta Force was, you know, there was nothing limiting how deep this thing was going, and the Delta Force was pushing it all the way down, putting the beans halfway to China. So really not a big fix or anything, kind of aggravating because you got to fish the parts up in the middle of that shank, kind of hard to get to. We'll pull the boxes off. I got the parts here at the shop because, again, not uncommon for us to have those types of breakdowns. So hopefully we'll be back up and running here, maybe 30, 40 minutes or so.
All right, to get it off, after I take the hardware off and disconnect the load sensor and stuff, you got to snake it out through here. Getting it out ain't the hard part. It's getting it back in and all lined up.
And here's what we got out. See, this thing's supposed to have a stem that sticks up that the depth control handle goes on, and when that breaks off, you know, there's nothing preventing depth. And then this piece right here is a load cell. This load cell's still good, it was still reading, but that one on that side was not reading. So we got to take number 15 off to replace the stem. We're going to take number 13 off to replace the load cell. Old Kelly's got jokes. That's what she set the monitor to say last year whenever, you know, you got a unit not putting out a seed. Instead of just like a normal chime, she had to set to that obnoxious, she's gonna blow Captain setting. Anyway, we're just about out of seed. I'm trying to run it dry. We got like a half of an acre left here in this corner. And just about ready to plant test plots. I've already shuffled, shut up! I've already shuffled seed around in my units to try and level them out. I was trying to finish up this last little corner right here before I totally run out of seed. We're going to have a little bit of skip row beans here. We just got loaded up with the first plot. We're planting 2 varieties per pass, and it is just going to be me and Savannah putting in these plots. Normally it wouldn't be that bad, but planting soybean plots is a pain in the butt because after every pass we got to vacuum out 22 out of the 23 units. The center one here in the front, we're leaving it empty, so you know there's a 38-inch gap in between plots, and we can cut them a whole lot easier. But in total we got 14 different varieties to test, so we got 7 passes, so 7 times we got to vacuum out and put seed in. So it'll take us a little while to get this done. It'll bring you back. All right, all the plots are planted. I need me a cold beer. Wish somebody bring me one. Is it too early in the season to say I can't wait for winter to get here again? I'm ready for that cold weather to return. Well, Andy and Kelly finally got done spraying weed and got loaded up with paraquat. And he got over here and started spraying burn down on the cover crops here. Because paraquat is a contact herbicide and not a systemic herbicide, you know, I'm not worried about spraying it at night because it'll still be there on the surface whenever the sun comes up, and it'll still you know, take the chemical in and kill the cover crop. Ideally, I would like to see them out here earlier while the sun was still shining, so we could go ahead and start getting some activity on the cover crop on killing it, because paraquat's one of those chemicals that it's basically you know, it's a photosynthetic disruptor, and you know, it only really works on the plant when the sun is shining. So you know, basically, you know, it kind of like it needs sunlight to activate it. But it'll still be there when the sun comes up tomorrow, and hopefully we got a good clear day to where we can start getting some quick activity to the paraquat here on the cover crops and start killing it. That way we can come back with our residual herbicide like I talked earlier and get it applied before the rain comes in sometime on Thursday. As you can see behind me, got our planter folded up. We are headed into the shop. We are done for today. Overall, for first day of planting, can't say it went too awful bad. We got this farm done, got 80 acres in the ground. We had 2 breakdowns to fix, and we got all of our test plots planted too, so not a bad day. That'll leave us tomorrow with 60 acres to plant, which, considering I got to do some filming tomorrow, should be easily doable, especially if Kelly can get on the planter while I got to run in and film. We'll be in bigger fields and ought to get that knocked out pretty quickly, and then get all the place changed out for corn, and who knows, maybe we'll get a little bit of corn planted before the rain gets here. We'll just have to wait and see. Alright, out here this beautiful morning, we've made it over here to Clanton. Gonna be our second and last farm of full season beans. We're gonna go ahead and head back here to the back and start. Here's the ford I showed you a few videos ago where you know, had to clean all the sand and silt and muck out with a track hoe. We still got a lot of water seeping out somewhere. But yeah, my tires ain't squishing 2 feet down in muck now. Still a little rough. Did about as good as I could with a track hoe in the dark, but it is now passable. And this planter shouldn't drag any like it would have before, and potentially get me stuck down here. Alright, I'm going to be out here planting for a couple hours this morning before Kelly comes out here and swaps with me. I got to be back at shop mid-morning to do the filming, whatever, so she'll probably finish up the majority of this farm while I'm filming and stuff. But anyway, I don't think I ever told y'all what flavor of bean I'm actually planting. We're planting Pioneer 48A14Es. Now, I think I said back in the winter, you know, Pioneer is kind of doing away with my favorite lineup of bean that I've ever had. 47A64X's, just an absolutely fantastic bean. That is no longer available. And then there's a couple other varieties of beans that are off that same parentage that have almost exact characteristics of the 47A64s. I think it's 48A70s BLXs. You know, it's also an Extend Flex bean, and you know, Extend is now being banned in the U.S. for in season, so the soybean companies are not, you know, producing Extend beans anymore. I think this is going to be the last year I can get the 48Z70 BLX. Well, this 48A14E is an enlist bean, and it's almost the exact same variety as 47A64X's, but it's a little bit older variety. I don't know how much longer it's going to be around. And after talking to my Pioneer rep yesterday while planting the plot, you know, right now there's nothing in the pipeline to continue that lineage of family, which I'm really upset about, because I mean, you're talking about a performer. That lineup of beans is just being, with the exception of last year, you know, no beans were lights out last year, but with the exception of last year, my soybean crops have been just absolutely lights out ever since they came out with that lineage. So Corteva, Pioneer, if you're watching this, you want to keep my business, you better keep on either producing this 48A14E or come out with some more varieties, new varieties in that lineage of parents, because in my opinion, those several varieties have been what's really kept y'all as a top performer here in this area, and they have certainly kept me happy. But anyway, we have planted this 48A14E in the past. You know, I prefer the Extend versions, but those are no longer being produced. But I have planted this one in the past, and it's done extremely well. And we got it here on some high yielding ground. I'm expecting to do extremely well again. I mean, who knows, come later on this summer, I might think we got good enough crop to enter in the Tennessee soybean yield competition contest again. You know, we won it a couple years ago for our area, and I think it was with this variety of bean, if I'm not mistaken.
So I am out here finishing up this 60-acre field of full season beans while Matt is at the shop The last 2 days, Andy and I have been spraying fungicide on wheat. This is our last spray of wheat. The fungicide we were using is Rosario 400. It is really good for wheat that is coming out the boot and also pollinating. And with as much rain as we've gotten lately, we need to be out there protecting that wheat as much as possible from any diseases that it could get. And there's still a bunch of time left in this lovely growing season that we've got to make sure that every crop that we have is protected against anything, especially with this year that we're having. So after we did that, we went straight to swapping over to burn down for planting beans and corn. And then as soon as we're done here, we'll swap everything over, go to corn, and then this cover crop is really growing, so woo! We also have to get the roller crimper done. That has been sitting in the shop for a solid, almost seems like 3-4 weeks, almost a month, and might need to be using that on some corn ground when we thought that we weren't gonna have to use it, but it looks like we might have to. This could have used some, definitely a roller crimper, but it's doing a really good job. So just a lot going on, a lot of chaos and organizing everything. So found a lot of armadillo holes already, so I'm glad I can remember those when we come back and spray these here in a couple weeks. So Andy was out here about 9 o'clock and now it is 1 p.m. and you can see that the cover crop is dying pretty quickly. So we know that the chemicals are working. Holy crap. So with these temperatures, the plants are really taken up. And then Andy is going to be back out here later with our second pass. And we're going to be using Zidua and Metribuzin. Also, I didn't think it would be bothering me, but it's, yeah, definitely time to start taking the meds. I was trying to catch up and leave about 4 or 5 passes. Unfortunately, I have run out of seed. So, I am waiting on a seed tender to come rescue. I'm gonna try in the meantime to kind of move some of these around because we don't have a lot to plant that's left, but oh yeah, we don't want to fill it all the way up because then we're having to dump it back into bags, because after this we are going to corn and then we're gonna have to change all these out. Now the front units we can leave the soybeans in them, but the back units we cannot. Probably gonna need to take a hose to this. It is still muddy out there, but oh, there's my cup, yay. I'm gonna go ahead and try and transfer some seed while waiting. Oh, this might work. Just the front units I guess need to be done. What a gorgeous day.
Yeah, here we are, all done with crop number 1. 140 acres of soybeans are in the ground. Kelly almost got done. She was like about 3 acres shy on seed. We still had a little bit left of the seed tender and I had to bring it over here. Whatever got done was you know, my media obligation today. But anyway, got that taken care of. Got the last couple acres of beans planted, and here after 5 o'clock, I think we got enough time to get back to the shop, get this planter changed over, and they pushed the rain forecast back about another 12 hours or so. So I think there's a dang good chance we're gonna get some corn in the ground tomorrow. So real excited about that. So I'm gonna close out this video here. Appreciate y'all watching. See you tomorrow in the cornfield.